Hello, Lindy Fest. How's everybody doing? Good day of classes today?
Yeah.
Good dances last night? Got that band last night? All right. Jared, you can fade me down, that music down a little bit. That's the music from the Inside the Actors studio. This is Inside the Dancers studio. Thank you everybody for coming. We're very excited to have the group of people that we have here today. I'll introduce them in just a second. But first I'll tell you who I am if you don't know. You can't read my badge. My name is Ryan Swift. I'm the head DJ this weekend at Lindy Fest. And thank you. And I also host a podcast called The Track, which you may or may not have heard of. Thank you. Dozens of listeners everywhere. I've actually talked to all three of the guests today on that, so if you want to hear an hour and a half with each of them on their own, you're welcome to check that out at thetrackpodcast.com. But the one episode I do want to tell everybody about is this past month's episode. She started applauding until she realized who the guest this last month was. It was Tina Morales-Armstrong. Co-event organizers for Lindy Fest. It was one of the best 2 hours of my life getting to talk to Tina by myself for 2 hours, and you all get to listen to that. So please go check it out. Tina is delightfully embarrassed right now, and she'll get some more accolades later tonight, but she's been critical to the scene for 20 years in ways that I don't think anybody understands the full depth and breadth of, but now it's all on the record, so now you all know. So I encourage you to check that out. But this hour is not about me. This is about three of our very special guests today. I don't know where they are. Oh, they're hiding in the dark. All right. So I really don't need to introduce them or describe their accolades. They have been teaching you all weekend long. They have won basically every title you could possibly win when it comes to swing dancing and Lindy Hop. Skye Humphreys, Naomi Uyama, and Peter Strom, everybody. Please welcome them inside the Dancers studio. I thought they were going to vault over the railing there, so I'm a little disappointed to start out, but we'll have Naomi do that on the way back.
Oh, thank you.
So I think you guys all have a microphone?
My seat's crooked.
Yeah, that's why we gave you that one.
Go ahead.
You want to slide over a little bit?
That's great. I like it like this.
I thought Skye was going to get that one. He's got better balance than you do, so I just thought it would be okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to like my phone.
Are we good?
Yeah.
I want everyone to be
We all have
comfortable.
mics, so you should,
You have a mic? You don't have a mic? Oh, you do have a mic. Okay. So, Skye, Naomi, and Peter, give them one more round of applause. Thank you. So, I would also just like to thank them in advance for teaching a morning's worth of classes and getting all sweaty teaching you guys and letting me sleep in and shower nice and clean. I need all the help I can get interviewing these beautiful people. So I like to start off these conversations and talk just a little bit about where you come from as a dancer and where you come from. Can anybody see me? You're good? Where we come from, where you started dancing. So I'll just go down the line. Skye, since you're closer to me, I'll ask you first, and then Naomi and Peter, if you don't mind answering the same question. I know you'll have different answers, but where did you start swing dancing?
I started in Ithaca, New York. It's upstate New York, not far from where you started. I guess it was probably 96, 95, 96, something like that. My mother danced and encouraged me to, encourage is a gentle way. She kind of brought me along to dancing early on when I was 11 or 12. And from there I went on and I really fell in love with the dance and did some ballet and some modern jazz, lots of different things, but Lindy Hop was always my fave.
Naomi?
I started in the DC area, and a little clap from Jerry, from Tina as well, I'm sure, in late '97. So like just before everything exploded. It was a good time to be in that place because it was one of the few scenes that you could go out many nights a week, kind of before the Gap Bed hit. So, yeah.
And Peter?
I started in Minneapolis. And thank you.
One clap.
And I think it was 98 or late 97, somewhere around the same sort of time.
Yeah, so I started about that same time too, and I had been to all of those scenes relatively early on, and I found them all very different from where I started in Rochester, New York. But as I was talking to you guys earlier in the week and some other folks, we were kind of just realizing how many years ago that actually was, and how different swing dancing is now than it was
It was
then.
about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Just did the math.
More than 20 years.
That's right.
But what were the scenes like in 1998? What was it like going out and
What were our scenes like, or
Yeah.
what were scenes like?
what were your scenes like? I think it's a pretty good cross section. I mean, I think LA. We talked about LA a lot last year, and that was very different. But what was it like, going out in DC or going out in Minneapolis or going out in Ithaca and dancing multiple nights a week? And how is it compared to today?
Well, like I said, DC was in some ways a lucky place to be in 1997 because there was already some swing dancing happening. And there were some great venues to go. So the first venue I ever went to was Glen Echo Ballroom. Is that the first venue you went to? I listened to Tina's The Track podcast, which you guys should all listen to. It's great spending 2 hours with Tina. And she was talking about going to Glen Echo for the first time, and I really, really related. It's a huge old ballroom, so not every city out there still has one from the 1930s. And I walked in, and there was a big band playing on stage, and hundreds of people dancing, and I was completely struck dumb because I just didn't think that still existed. In theory, if you asked me, like, would you ever go out swing dancing? I'd be like, sure, in theory, but I didn't know that anyone was still doing that. I didn't know that it was something that was kind of alive and well. So in DC, you could go to places like Glen Echo. There were other spots you could go during the week, different bars and clubs, especially, I started in late 97, but in 1998, there were just more and more places you could go. Some of them a bit temporary and some of them stuck around. So the scene back then, I'm a terrible guesstimator of how many people or how many jelly beans are in the jar, but there was a healthy scene, let's say a healthy scene for 1997. There were a lot of people back then compared to other smaller cities, so we're pretty lucky.
Peter?
Minneapolis was, I think it was kind of largely like a bit of a rockabilly-ish scene. I think a lot of the scenes had some of that going on where the rockabilly scene sort of continues today. More six-count stuff, maybe a little lighter on the dancing and more heavy on like the scene and the music, and a bit the style of the thing. So that was really the stuff I saw. First lesson I went to was just like a before the dance lesson at this place, Mario's Bar, which was beneath Gastoffer Gimmelkeit, this weird German restaurant northeast Minneapolis. It was very, very odd. But they just did a little six-count lesson, and we started doing it. And most people were doing mostly six-count, and there were a couple people who had just gotten into Lindy Hop, but they came out of this more, I would say, rockabilly-ish scene and community. And when I started, swing culturally was a bit of a fad, and it was a little bit surfacing into like beyond just our weird cult, like to like people, normals, knew about swing dancing. And so there was a lot of lots of clubs would have a swing night. So for a couple of years there, I could go out and kind of tour a normal club, and there would be like a swing night there. So we would see that there. But it was largely a six-count scene, and interspersed with a little bit of Lindy Hop there, here and there. And it took me a long time actually to kind of get doing Lindy Hop actually.
What, Skye, I'm going to ask you about it in a minute, but
Why did it take you a while to get into Lindy Hop, Peter?
That's why you shouldn't be with animal with your wife.
I love this
Don't know too
story.
many things.
How many counts are enough? I mean, you have six.
And your best friend, you shouldn't do it either. The thing is, I had a hard time with the swing out because it was difficult, and I was like, I thought rocking that stage with the old six count. And I remember telling somebody, which I think was a bit of an excuse, this is what Naomi's looking for, is I was like, Lindy Hop is cool, but East Coast swing, it's just got that bounce, I just feel it, you know what I mean? I feel the music, so I just, I feel it, whatever. Like, Lindy Hop is fine.
Feeling it.
Yeah, just feeling that 60.
you still got that bounce.
I do.
You still got that bounce.
I do. And I do a mean East Coast swing, let me tell you. You can tell by that poster out there, me and Ken. I've got a mean East Coast swing tucked away in the pocket, ready for any moment.
You were jump jiving and well.
I was doing all three.
Yeah, at once. What do you miss most about that early time, that first year or two dancing? Because we've been at this for a long time now, and I think our approach has changed to the dance. But looking back at that time, like, is there something that you miss that you don't have right now when you go out dancing?
Well, I mean, I think there's kind of two parts to that question. We can talk about that era, what that era gave you or didn't give you. But there's also that time in your dance life when it's brand new and you're completely obsessed with it. So I think all of us, at some point, if you're past that point now, you might be well into it. But if you're past that point, at some point you mourn the passing of that time when all you could think about was swing dancing. You go out every single chance you get, and every single dance you had was amazing, and every single partner you had a great dance.
And every song and every supermarket
Yeah.
and diner was like, maybe we could swing.
There were a lot of like
Right
revelations.
here, oh my
What,
god.
we could let happen this right now.
At the Waffle House with
So like that's sort of all mixed up in the era for us because that just happens to be when we started. So there's a part of me that misses that, but there's another part of me. If you're dancing past a certain point, you have to, you mourn it a little bit, but you can't get stuck there. You develop a different relationship with dancing, and it goes much deeper than that time. When I think of some of the things that I was like, oh yeah, I used to have a great dance with everyone, like that was my conception of the thing, and it's because I didn't have a lot of taste, and now I have a much deeper, better dance with somebody. Well, it's true. Like if there's no difference between one dance or the other, that's because that was about me, like not being developed and having a taste for the thing. When every song is good, like every song I danced to was not good. But
A large number of them.
yeah.
Probably most of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of rough ones back there.
Exactly. So it's it's like a double-sided coin to get past that point. So we can talk a little bit about that era, but I also don't want to be like, oh, it was better back when I started, because everyone says that. Like, oh, when I started,
I
we
don't say
really.
that.
I don't think it was better. I personally don't think it was better.
No, it wasn't
okay.
better.
I mean, my knees were better.
I would say one of the things that I miss, and probably everyone has this experience on some level, is that so much of the dance is also the people that you start with.
Yeah.
And that you kind of always, to be in the dance and enjoy it, you do kind of need a posse of other people who are into the dance with you. And I've met so many great people and sort of been a member in lots of great groups of people over the years. But definitely there's something so special about the group of people that you start. It's so weird that you would be like, it just happens to be that some of my best friends were in this like first dance class with me. But I think it's something about starting that journey together with people. So I certainly I get to see a lot of those people still, thankfully, but I do miss getting to go out with them as a kind of a posse. That was sweet. Even though I've got some great posse members these days as well.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue to the next question that I had.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I miss about that time and a little bit later was the community was kind of centered around Lindy Exchanges as kind of like the thing that people did, and it wasn't workshop weekends, although we had workshop weekends, and it wasn't competitions. So they really almost didn't even exist for the most part, but they were community based, and we met our friends at these things, and we kind of went from city to city, seeing our friends from city to city. Do you think we've moved away from that kind of community focus? I think Lindy Fest nails it still 23 years later that it's a community event. But do you think we've moved away from that, or do you think it's just kind of morphed into something else when you're like attending workshop weekends?
Or moved away from the community thing. I mean, first of all, I think back in the day. Okay, was I the first person to say back in the day? I was gonna try and avoid that. Okay. In any case, when we were newer dancers, I think actually it was mainly workshops that I connected with, and the Lindy Exchange thing came a little later. The first couple Lindy Exchanges were around that time, maybe the late 90s and the very early 2000s.
So few.
But there were very few, Ithaca Lindy Exchange being a real notable one. I met my future wife there. And like... but I think the exchange thing got a little bigger, a little bit later in my development. I mean, do you guys remember, like, I feel like it was a little bit more workshops that we would see.
Yeah, because Ithaca Lindy
Regional,
Exchange.
small workshops and maybe one big competition or something.
Yeah, the Ithaca Lindy Exchange in the 2000s was a couple of years after, actually, and we were still seeing each other like at other things. And I feel like the first exchanges, I mean, you know more about the first exchanges than I do, or maybe you do too, the Chicago-San Francisco exchange.
Yeah, I wasn't a part of them, but they were like, it was really like one city would go to another city, that city would go back, they actually exchanged, hence the name. And now it's...
I know, you're like, why do they call it exchanges? Because
Yeah.
they were actually an exchange.
And now an exchange is just...
Someone just explained that to me, and I had like,
Yeah.
I like was at the Ithaca exchange, but I missed like all the others. I saw that.
Well, you were like 14, but like...
It's true.
Just busy spinning...
You weren't running.
I was thinking of that when you guys were like, yeah, it was great. There were all these clubs. I was like,
We did skip over
I remember going to
your
Boston
Wednesday
and
night
like
hop.
sitting outside like a bar, being like my mom was like, all right, you gonna stay in the car? Let's see, maybe we can get in. Like I don't know.
So,
I wasn't supposed to be.
The Neo Swing revival was sadder
That's true.
for some of us.
so speaking,
I was very excited to get let in by DJ Dave Wolf at Mario's that one time because I came in a lot and then they kind of started carding and I was like, oh, I didn't bring it.
that always works.
I was 20 when I went there. And
always-
they
I
were,
left it at the last bar. I was
yeah, I was like, I've been to so many
I think
bars.
it's
That's all I'm
in my
saying.
car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but like they looked at the DJ and they were like, "Is this guy okay?" He's like, "Yeah, he's cool." And I was like, "All right, I'm totally in with DJ Dave Wolf, rockabilly
We're
player."
like, I don't have an idea.
My mom has it.
Skye always
Go back to
brought
the
in people with
exchange. I don't
Ithaca
think-
dollars in it, and he just got in.
That's
So,
right,
so
I think I missed the exchange thing largely. So
well, you didn't because we have video of you in exchange. So we're gonna.
But it's just the one.
I'm pretty sure that's not me. Nope.
So this is the Ithaca. Give me 1 second, Jerry. This is the. Give me 1 second, Jerry.
I
That's
don't
right.
miss these days.
This is Ithaca Exchange 2000. Peter Strom is on the left,
That's not me.
and Scott Humphreys is on the right.
I recognize him with his sweat markings there.
Your
Characteristic.
not me yet.
Rorschach's
Not yet. He will
markings on
be.
your back.
So we'll play just a little bit of this. This is an exchange in
This
2000.
is the event where Peter and I met. This is 2000.
This is where I met, and I think both of you guys too.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
married to either of you, so it's not as sweet. But let's just show this real quick. Let's just give people a look at it.
And what you gotta do is you don't look too much at the dancing, and you mainly just think about how it felt on the inside, which is very good. Oh.
We like to tap the floor a lot then. That's good, Jerry. I do have Skye and Peter and Sarah Lee and Maggie
You
Moon.
were right the first time. No applause required. Don't confuse
But
yourself.
I do want to show one
Call it
other.
someone's 2-year social dancing.
I want to show
I'll
one
just
other
say
thing
like
from
limp
Ithaca
wrists
Exchange.
were very in. This was all the rage. Everybody.
We've
was
come so
doing it.
far. We've come so far. Jerry, can you pull up that
I
other clip
haven't
that I
hit
wanted
the
to
floor
show?
in a long time, actually.
This is
Oh, here we go.
this is Skye Humphreys and Dawn Hampton in 2000 at the Ithaca Exchange.
I watched this. He was killing us, y'all. Don't let the video fool you. He was killing us.
I think that it looks like I'm off the music, but I think it's probably out of sync.
She is the best. That's all there is to it. Check the shoes, y'all. I'm just gonna say, check the shoes.
Alright, Dawn Hampton and Skye Humphreys, everybody.
You can see Skye still looks really good back there, right? I mean, it's still pretty good for a new dancer.
There's no
Nope,
video of me
okay,
because
never
nobody
mind.
wanted
Sorry.
to see me, so everyone was watching then.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I was gonna say, like, I remember Dawn really loved that. Like, she loved dancing with you back then. Like, because you had such a special, different thing to your dancing. As you can see, it's different. And like, Dawn was super into it. I know it's like, everyone knows how to swing out well now, which we were still working on. But like, I just remember it was really, I was like, she is totally digging dancing with that dude right now. I was watching that and I was like, he's killing this right now.
Do you remember that dance, Skye?
I remember the day. I've seen I think I've seen the footage once before, and so it's hard to say what's footage and what's memory.
Yeah.
But I can definitely remember the day. I remember saying bye to Dawn, giving her a hug, and she smacked my ass. It's like such a great thing. I was like, oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, man. That checks out. That sounds legit.
I definitely remember the day. I don't know if I remember the day.
Amazing.
She was amazing.
Yeah, Dawn was amazing, and you know, Dawn will come up as a topic of conversation as we go through today, I think. But speaking of workshops, like you guys were talking about, is like kind of a place where we were all traveling together as well. One of the things that I talked to Tina about on the podcast was the early days of Lindy Fest, and I think the three of you came very early.
I think, yeah, these guys were a couple years earlier than I was. I came in 2001, but they were a little earlier.
Do you remember your first Lindy Fest?
Yeah, actually my first out-of-town job was from Tina. I think all three of us can say that. Maybe you guys talked about that a little on the
That's
podcast,
right.
how she believes in people, maybe before they believe in themselves, and certainly before the students believe in us. And just brings
That's
people
right.
out, gives people opportunities. And so my first time teaching was in Houston, but it was for H-Town Swings, 1999. And then I came to Lindy Fest 2000. And we were just talking about if you were at a Lindy Fest
I can't
before
remember if it was
2000.
99 or 2000 for me. I don't know. Do you happen to know?
Okay, so we both had the same first Lindy Fest. And I remember that there was like 4 Ithaca kids, 4 DC sort of kids, and then Singh was there, the Norbaileys were there, a few other people, of course, Frankie.
Did you teach that weekend?
Me? Yeah.
And Skye? Were you on the staff that weekend?
I was definitely in
We
the
were-
staff. Yeah, people came to my class.
What was that like for you? Was that like your first, like one of your first teaching gigs? So like, what was that experience like?
I mean, it was scary, I was nervous, but, I mean, it was, I don't know, it was a great weekend. I'm really grateful that that was the weekend that we were teaching at, that one of the first places that I ever taught was Houston, both for H-Town and for Lindy Fest. Because, I mean, Tina was a great organizer, and she really had so much faith in us that even though we were nervous, well, I speak for myself and for Nina, the couple of other people I was teaching with, and probably felt the same way, but it was nice to have Tina's confidence in us when we went in there. I don't know, I mean, we're like kids.
Yeah.
So like I was nervous, but also you have the confidence of a 16-year-old, so you're like, I guess I should teach at this fancy place, you know.
Do you have anything that you guys were doing as young teachers that you still do today as teachers, or have you changed your approach totally?
Rotate students.
I think that I definitely remember being really, like you said, workshops was something that we would travel to all the time, where in my experience when I started that, I really loved going to workshops. And so I think I was lucky that I got to experience going to an event as such a fun thing. And so I was really excited when I got the opportunity to teach classes at a workshop. Like, I think knowing how much I enjoyed that, even if I felt like I'm not necessarily able to teach all these people who are here, I know how fun it is to all be in a room and working on stuff, and to try and facilitate that. I think that's still a through line for me that for me it's I can really remember how fun classes could be, and trying to recreate that for other people and myself still. I think it's something that sticks with me. I don't know that it always happens, but that's
It's on the inside, it's there.
Yeah.
You're thinking about how fun it could be.
Exactly.
Not now, but in a general sense.
How was your first Lindy Fest?
My first, I think I came for H-Town Swings first
okay,
as a
yeah.
ringer. Like I remember I was in my first harangue ever in the year 2000, and I got an email from Tina, who I had met a couple months earlier. We met at the Natural Ball, and then you saw me at the Detroit thing, and we like danced a little bit, and we were like, this is fun, this is working. And I think we danced to like Al Green or something. We stopped at the same time. We're like, hey. So she sent me an email, and she was like, hey, if you can make it to H-Town Swing, I'm happy to let you in free, like kind of as a ringer. And I was like, oh my God. It was That's the first thing I ever been like invited to. So that's how I came to Houston the first time. So I actually like, I left London where I was staying for a while. Like I left there and I came back to the States on this like grievance fair because I was supposed to leave later, but I had to get home in time to do H-Town. So I went to the airport and I told them that my grandpa had died, which he had like 6 months earlier. And I was like, yeah, my grandpa died. Just leave it at that. I gotta get back. Leave it at that. And then they were like, okay. And so I had to wait for 2 flights to go by. They put me on the 3rd flight, and they like got me to Philadelphia. And I was like, okay, there's no flight getting there. And they put me on another airline on a grievance fare. Got me home. I landed at 9 in the morning, and I had already booked a Priceline flight for 10 in the morning to go to Houston. So I took my bags out, checked them back in, got on a plane to Houston, and got out and kissed the ground when I got up there. I literally, like, when Brian picked me up, I got out, and I was like, hang on, I need to kiss the ground. Because it was 36 hours of travel. And I was like, I made it. I was very, very excited. My first Lindy Fest, I was assisting Sylvia. Again,
No,
sorry
we were
about that.
teaching
Sorry about that.
together.
No, it was an assistant situation. She was super cool about it, but it was very patient. Very patient teacher.
If there was one thing you could go back in time and tell those baby dancers that you were 20 years ago about dancing, or what you have learned about dancing now, or how you appreciate dancing now in a way that you might not have then, what would you go back and tell them while they were sitting on that flight for 36 hours thinking about dancing?
I don't know that, I mean, this is maybe a bit of a cop-out, but I don't know that there's so many things to enjoy about this music and this dance and this community, and I think if you stick with it, you're going to get to all of them in a way. And so even though I think when I look back at myself and I can see so many misguided sort of weird steps that I took, but at the same time, I think if you're doing what you enjoy and you're finding your enjoyment in the dance, it might not be the most responsible approach to the culture or the tradition of the dance, but it's still, I don't know that I could have skipped any of the steps that I went through, and I would love to be able to go back and sort of give myself a hand, but at the same time, I don't know that if I hadn't sort of used up the enjoyment of whatever I was enjoying at that time, that I could be the dancer that I am now, and I wouldn't want that to change. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, feel free to correct your earlier selves as well.
I feel really similar. I mean, like, of course, like, I think part of the, like, if as people who've been dancing a long time, if there's some, like, richness to our dancing, or our sense of the dance, like, part of that is because of the crazy deviations we've done, and, like, we've had a really wide range of inputs, which is actually in some ways a little tougher to get now, because there's a more established and clearer, like, sort of pedagogy out there, and a clearer path, and a much faster path to get good, which is awesome. But the meandering does benefit you in some ways. For me, I think, in answer to your question, I think it's something I'm always asking of students because of this. Like, I would just try to not give myself excuses to not do something. You know, for example,
Could you go back and tell me that as well?
Yeah. Like, if I thought, East Coast swing had that bounce and Lindy Hop didn't. Maybe I was like, maybe I'm just full of shit and I should just try and learn to swing out like everybody else is doing. I could have been swinging out a little better a couple months earlier. And again, like, it's in the grand scheme, it's fine. I'm getting where I'm getting, and it was all good. But I think that tendency, like, we all probably have it, but I definitely had that a little bit. And I was just like, I could have just skipped that and been like, go for it. In a class, I think I was very happy to do that on my own. I could be a little like, I don't know, I just feel it like this. A lot of that kind of talk. So I've gotten better at that with time.
I want to be, that's my answer as well. I want to revise my earlier.
We'll go back in the tape and we'll change it for the internet.
We'll just
Strike it.
We'll dub that.
I think, I think Peter and I were similar in that way, where, you want to protect yourself a little bit and make some excuses to not look foolish in the process of learning. And I think that
Clearly
just
it
looks
didn't
like I'm
work
still
at all.
making excuses for myself.
nothing to
We
do
saw
with
the
you,
video.
Skye.
It all looks
feeling it.
Nothing to do
better.
with you, Skye. About me.
Come on.
Anyway.
Dawn liked it.
Don't like that.
I mean, for people who've been dancing 20 years, I think it took me about 10 of those years to get to a point where I could, admit to myself and to other people that I had something to learn and I could look stupid in front of people in that process of learning. I always wanted to protect myself a little bit, and I learned a lot slower because of that.
To be fair, it's hard to admit how wrong you are when you're winning every goddamn competition.
Yeah, it was really
It's
easy
a rough
for me.
couple of years there for everyone else.
It was really easy for me
Truly.
to just come to terms with the fact that I look stupid.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
Some people have an easier
I learned that
road.
lesson
finish
early
my
on.
point. Let me finish my point. I would tell my younger self to not be scared of trying to learn new things, because you guys, you talk a lot about how really early on workshops gave you a lot. I didn't go to as many workshops as you guys. I went to some, but I wish I had gone to more, and I wish I stayed in workshops for longer, because I think I would have gotten something out of that. And I definitely think there was an aspect, maybe a little bit of the scene, the people I was hanging out with, but also of myself that was like, oh, in order to think of myself as a cool, competent dancer, or if people want to think of me as a teacher, I can't be seen in classes not being able to do something. So I wish I'd stuck with that longer. At the same time, maybe I wasn't ready to hear that. So like if myself could tell me then, like it might be wasted advice. And kind of related to that, I would definitely tell myself to go to more workshops with old timers, because I do think that is one advantage that we had about living in that time, was having a direct contact with some of the dancers who were there back in the day. And even though I was lucky enough just by being around and dancing a lot in the scene and getting to go to wonderful events like Lindy Fest early on when Frankie was still around, got to see some talks and go to classes. I wish I'd gone to more. I always wish I'd gone to more. So I would
never wish you'd skipped one of those.
Exactly.
In retrospect.
So I wish that's advice I would give myself too, would be to be in those classes specifically.
So speaking of winning everything, it's Peter.
Dot, dot, dot.
Thank you for that. You guys were in competitions early on, and I remember those early competitions, and they're amazing. But I also remember Thursday's newcomer division, which was like phenomenal. Like,
That's pretty good.
The level of people for the first time they were competing was really amazing. I don't know if you have any. You're all like waiting. I know we're gonna go to the video. We will. But
I know you're not, if you're doing winning, like you're gonna be one of these two.
let's just go to the video first, and then I'll ask them a question after. So
Here's my question: is it my first contest? Because I know what my first contest is, and I feel like this is a challenge to Jerry Almonte if he was able to get the video from VSO 1998.
no, it's not. No, it's not.
Oh well, Jerry, I'm disappointed. Junior Classic Division, Virginia State Open, 1998. What are we watching instead?
Seal your own
The
fate.
internet's been a little
Do
tough.
it.
I know, that's the thing.
So,
he
Jerry,
will
we'll
do
skip
it.
to
But Jerry's
Naomi.
already done that on so many other things, so
Yeah,
he might
we
as
do
well
it,
do it on
Jerry.
that one.
We'll skip to Naomi. We'll do hers first. This is
That's what I get for.
1998 ALHC, what was formerly known as the Jack and Jill. This is Naomi on the left. Simonson.
We need a higher definition for some of these facial
I
expressions.
know. There was an epic eye roll in
There's
there.
some
I saw
pursed
it.
lips in there, I can tell you.
I saw it. So, Naomi in 1998, everybody. I think she finished second with Simon Selman there.
Oh my god.
Give it up for Naomi. And they're sitting here grimacing because I know it's hard to look at yourselves like from 20 years ago, but like
Oh, it's hard to look at her because it's gonna be much better.
that's
than
damn
mine.
good.
I know.
That is damn good. All right, let's go back to Skye that same year at that same event.
I was hoping we'd get it.
Tina and I talked about this one. She loved this one. This is Skye at ALHC 1998 in the juniors division. Jerry, if you can swipe that over, Frankie.
This is the event we first met, Skye. I don't think we never chatted. This is the first event we were at together.
Other kids in the room. Very
Yeah,
excited.
exactly. Like, who are those kids?
Although you guys seemed a lot older.
It was Luciano.
Well, this is Skye on the right. This is Brian on the right.
Oh, they weren't ready. I haven't seen these clips.
Are they gonna shut him up? Looks great.
14 we're talking about.
There it is.
How old were you then? 13, 14? 14 years old. Skye Humphreys, everybody. Thanks for listening. 1998. That's also damn good. Also damn good. Speaking of damn good, Peter has really done a thorough job scrubbing the internet of his presence from his early dancing. I gotta say, we did some extensive research, but I did find, I don't know if you remember the Harlem Jazz Dance Festival in 2003. You could tell it was Peter because of his baggy clothes, but this is Peter Strong. Peter, who were you dancing with?
That's Mel Veriano.
Mel Veriano.
This is what Manu was making fun of me for not triple stepping.
That was Peter and Mel. Also damn good. I hate to tell you.
Yeah, I had a couple more years to practice, but yes, that's good.
So, did you learn anything as in those early competitions that you can maybe give some tips to these newcomers that we saw on Thursday who all did a phenomenal job? Anything as they kind of embark on a career or a hobby of competitions? Anything that you learned from a competitive standpoint that you might be able to impart some wisdom?
I mean, the best advice I ever got about competitions was from Sylvia, right over here. And she was like, the dance is going to be about 3 minutes or whatever, Right before the dance and right after the dance, you're the same person, you're the same dancer. If you win, you're not better. If you lose, you're not worse. So go out there and enjoy it. And I really took from that, like, I have to decide myself if I think it was good. I decide if I think I did well or poorly. And I don't really, concern myself with the placements too much. I mean, that's good for me because I don't compete that often. You know what I mean? And I've already won some things a long time ago, so I don't have to, fight for status in a way. But, I do think that's been really helpful. I don't check the scores. I don't care. That could be a helpful way if you want to win a lot of competitions. Then checking the scores is maybe worthwhile. It's not my particular focus, and so I found that really, really helpful. Just to be like, you know what, I'm going to do my best and try and. I want to win. I want to do well, but I'm not so different before or after this competition, regardless of how it goes, and it forces me to sort of assess myself. Like I'm the one who decides whether I think it was good or bad.
I think that's great advice.
I don't know
Sylvia
if
Sykes
it would-
imparted that on you?
She
Shocking.
did indeed. Yeah, I know. Yeah, she's got a lot of it.
Wisdom.
Got a lot of good wisdom there. Yeah.
Skye?
I don't know if it would be advice for newcomers, but for anyone who doesn't think they would enjoy competing, I think it's very good to ask yourself this question or remind yourself of this before you do it. But I would say, even if you think of yourself just as a social dancer and you just enjoy that, I think Lindy Hop historically has always had competition, performance, and social dancing is something that's been tied together. And I think you learn a lot about the dance competing it. And I would recommend that people give it a try, even if it's something that you don't think. Be careful that you don't put too much of your self-worth or your enjoyment of your dancing on the line, but do give it a try, because I think that experience, it's such an important experience to the dance and also to the music. That built into jazz music is that sense that people are going to step up and have a kind of a moment when they take a solo or when there's a spotlight shown on them and they need to say or do something. And I think we work in our scene to kind of take away that pressure quite a lot. And I think there's something so nice and so connected with the tradition of jazz and the dance tradition, and we can actually put a little bit of that pressure back on ourselves artificially. So even if it's something that you think you might not enjoy, again, go into it and be careful that you don't sort of destroy your enjoyment of dancing for yourself. But do give it a try, even if it seems like something outside of what you might like, because I think you learn a lot about yourself as a dancer and a lot about the dance.
Yeah, and I think that having that self-assessment in the middle of this critical venue where you are being critiqued, I think that's the place to show whether you actually are assessing yourself as a dancer. If you never put anything on the line, it's very easy to say I decide, but when other people are also deciding, you have to decide above them in some way. I think it's a good exercise, you know.
And it's tricky, if you bleed too much of the stress of it out of it, you won't necessarily feel like there's an occasion to which you have to rise. And I think, again, there's something so exciting about that you don't necessarily know what's going to come out of your body. And suddenly, as a dancer, something that you didn't know you had maybe comes out. And you find, if that's the first time you access it, you can bring it back into the rest of your dancing, maybe in a less stressful situation.
Oh, I don't, there was a point at which I realized that I wasn't happier checking the score sheets. So I mean, when you're in a contest, like, you should have you probably care about the results, and I do care about the results. I go to the awards and I find out who got placed, but, you know, with relative placement and a bunch of different judges, you know, finding out like, oh, these people put me here and then I got a weird 6th place, like, and letting that ruin my day, like, that didn't make me a better dancer. So, you know, I did try to get advice from judges I really respected, and I did care generally about where I placed, but looking at a million scores, especially after years of judging contests, you see how, you know, 6th place is not some reflection upon your dancing. It shouldn't actually change how you felt about the dance, you know, 1 second before you saw the score sheets. So that actually helped me a lot, is not looking at those.
So in addition to competing, you guys have done a lot of performance, and the 3 of you were part of
Some.
some.
I mean, some, for
Some.
like when we came up. I mean, if you like, I mean, is Remy in the room? Because like, if we're talking about who's done a lot of performance, like, not us.
Well, it's not a competition. This is not the competition part. This is just performing. You performed my favorite routine of all time, which was performed at Frankie 95 as part of the Silver Shadows. And I'm going to ask you about what it was like collaborating as the Silver Shadows. But before we do that, I think I'd just like to watch it because it's
We
the
rehearsed
best.
that here at Lindy Fest.
That's right.
You performed it here later at Lindy Fest also.
Is that right?
I think the next year.
Maybe.
But this was a beautiful performance, and I just want to watch it again. While we're watching this, can you guys tell me what it was like collaborating and putting this together for the intention of celebrating Frankie Manning?
This is the easiest one we did, I think, because there wasn't a lot of different goals. I think we all very easily came to the same goal. Like, we'll do Shiny Stockings, we'll do Jumping at the Woodside, we'll do Frankie Moves to Start, and we'll do classic stuff. You know, our interpretation of it, but I think actually it was the easiest one to choreograph on one level, because we weren't trying to like put ourselves out there so much as like, do this for Frankie. So this one in particular I think was definitely the easiest.
How did it feel performing that?
Just trying to not mess up. It's exactly like it looks. Kick, 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 breathe, breathe.
I'm gonna cut it short. You guys should just watch us on YouTube 1,000 times like I do all the time. But I wanna talk to these guys a little bit more. So please give it up to the Silver Shadows. Todd's here too. It's the best routine. I don't care what anybody says.
I don't care what they all
I
say.
think
care.
it's some shit and terrible.
Yeah. No, I've heard some. No, I'm kidding. It's the best routine. But Peter, you're saying this was Frankie. This is for Frankie and what you learned from Frankie. And there he is. He was a big part of how Lindy Fest came to be, and
Was why Lindy Fest came to be.
Yeah.
It was
And-
Frankie event first.
yeah, and we had the fortune of being in a scene with him for 10 years. And we've talked about celebrating like the roots of the dance, like you said earlier. What did you get from Frankie, or what did Frankie mean to you as part of our journey as swing dancers? Did you know Frankie personally? I mean, I know some of you got to know him.
Kind of, yes. I mean, know him personally. We weren't peers, but I knew him and he knew my name, which I always thought was very impressive. He would give me a hug when I saw him, which was pretty amazing. So knew him sort of. I don't know the man super well, and I think if you ask what Frankie gave us, it's just too big of a question, honestly, to have an answer to. Because, I mean, he was really such an instrumental figure in being there's this dance and there's this tradition that this dance lies within. I'm going to decide very consciously to share this with a whole new generation, a whole new demographic, a whole new set of people. And, he had a bunch of reasons, but I mean, part of that was as he was an older man at least, he was just incredibly generous. And so him doing that, I mean, it was just this open a conduit, and then we're all benefiting from it. If you don't know Frankie's name, it doesn't matter. You still benefit from Frankie. When he passed away in 2009, I started my home classes in 2010, and I kind of tell my students every month, one time, hey, you don't know, but the reason you're here is because this dude existed. And so he didn't give that to me personally exactly, but we just all benefit so very much. And I think it's very easy to kind of fetishize the older dancers, or really put them up on this weird pedestal, but he's just above us. It's not a pedestal, he's just above us. I mean, he's done so much. So he's such a foundational figure for the dance itself and the whole tradition, but particularly for this scene. None of us would dance like we do. None of us would probably be dancing, most of us in this room, if it weren't for Frankie. So it's just such a huge thing. The question for me, it's a little too big to answer personally in a way. I mean, I can think of something, but that would be my starting thing.
Do you guys go ahead, Skye?
Oh, I was just going to say, kind of picking up on that, I would just agree with everything, and also that it's very clear, especially as time passes, that so many of the assumptions that I sort of took for granted about what it means to dance with another person or be a part of a community
Yes.
were things that were just the way that he understood that interaction, and then chose to teach other people about that and sort of share. And so it's so funny because often I'll find myself sort of saying okay, this is something that's sort of intrinsic to Lindy Hop, and then we'll step back and realize that no, it's just that Frankie had that understanding of it and chose to put that spin on it, and so we all sort of take it for granted that this relationship is something positive, and that it's, I mean, just a million things, and it feels I don't know, too big is definitely right, because it feels the things that he passed on to all of us, whether, like you said, whether we know it or not, feel I'm learning from him all the time, in a way, things that I didn't even realize that I sort of picked up.
I feel that too. I feel it's certainly having had the benefit of seeing him in person, listening to his stories, and knowing him a little bit. Now, as I mature as a dancer, I find the things that are these revelations to me are things that I look at Frankie's dancing and I see that video. I'm I so clearly see that he's already there. Anywhere I get to, he's already there, waiting. Hey, welcome, you made it. Or so I see it. Of course, I would think my dancing is getting more like Frankie, but I think it's even now. And the thing is, like, when we answer questions like this, it's a good question, and it's really important to have, but it's so hard to not sound like a bunch of people who've danced a long time, be like, he's the most important, and just, like, fawn over this person, and shit. But it's not that, you understand? Like, it's really a deeper thing. I don't know how to get it across without having any effect to somebody who hasn't met the man.
Yeah. So maybe let me take it back and just maybe a little bigger than Frankie. One of the things that you talked about was, you know, putting people on pedestals, and Naomi talked about, you know, the history of the dance and learning from our elders. Is there anything that you'd like to see in our scene today on understanding our history or learning about our history or learning from our elders that are around still, or what we have? Is there a way that you'd like to see the community that you maybe haven't been seeing yet embrace the roots of the dance and the culture that it came from and the people that invented it?
I think what's tricky, it kind of, this whole conversation sort of ties back for me to that earlier one about what would you tell your younger self if you could sort of give them some good advice. And I think your point that, like, so often I look back and I see Frankie was trying to tell me.
He was telling
he was
yeah.
giving me all that
Yeah,
advice.
yeah.
I'm really like, figure something out about the dance. I'm like, man, why didn't anyone tell me? Oh, right, well. There he is on video telling me.
Over and over again. Yes, over and over again.
And again, I think what I was trying to get at earlier with my answer about that it's hard to tell anyone anything is that I think as much as you need to learn things about the tradition of this dance or this music or African American culture in general, I think there's also anyone that wants to do this dance, you don't need to just learn a bunch of things. You need to somehow find yourself in the tradition. And I think the hard thing is this dance is such a big experience that I think there's so many different pieces of it, and we'll connect right out of the gate with one little piece of it. And sort of what I was trying to say before is you kind of need to use up the enjoyment of that one little piece before you're able to enjoy more of it. Or you just need more of a willingness to try and find yourself in this tradition. Because, again, I think so often when people talk about the history or that we need to have more like knowledge about things, like that stuff is important, and if it helps you come to this tradition, I think it's very useful. But
it can also be like amassing like trophies, historical signifiers, like learning this knowledge. They're not trophies if they don't benefit you. If you don't feel like I dance better because of this, I enjoy this experience more because of this, I feel more myself in this scene because of this, then don't bother doing it. It's not so you can just say you read a book. That doesn't matter at all. I mean, to me.
Yeah.
I think that furthering of your entering yourself into this thing. I would say one of the things I think would be really helpful for the scene, like, first of all, I want to say I think I have great respect for this scene, and it annoys me all the time too. You know, like, this scene has a whole bunch of lacks, and I think one of the great things about this scene is that it actually tries to deal with some of the things it lacks. And a lot of social dancing I see from further away, they don't do that. And I think we respect our history more than most scenes I know. And we know our history more than most scenes I know, which is not to say that we don't need to know more. And that's one of the reasons I'm in this scene, is because I think being like weirdly with this millstone of this old music and this old dance tied around our neck, like, I think we do better dancing than other scenes. I like what we do more. And I really respect our scene for that. I mean, it's not a coincidence that this man's picture is up right now, and it's in the ballroom, and Dawn's picture is up. That's not just for nothing. That's significant. And so I think the scene does that stuff well. One thing I think would be really worthwhile is kind of jumping on Skye's point, if as individuals, like, concretely in our dancing and in our sort of exploration of the larger culture and tradition in which this all exists, like, if we, rather than trying to like look at it as anthropologists, if we tried to just be participants, you know what I mean? And the thing is, it's scary to be a participant. It's scary to get in the middle of a jam circle and be like, I'm going to do a thing and I'm going to say it's good and I'm going to be there, because you want all these safety nets around. And I think like what's tricky about the scene now is like we have a lot of help for everybody, and there's a lot of resources. We have video and good teachers, hopefully, and like these things. There's tons of resources, and a lot of those can be safety nets for people. And one of the benefits we had is there was just a little bit less of that when we were newer, and so our meanderings, like, I think they in some ways forced us to find our weird little selves in this thing, and I feel very much like I'm trying, when I do this, to get into it. So if I read a book, or if I learn some piece of historical knowledge I didn't know before, or I hear music and I appreciate it more than I didn't know before, it's not amassing knowledge for me. It's bringing me deeper in and closer into this sort of tradition that I'm trying to enter into. I'm not trying to learn a dance, I'm trying to enter this whole tradition. And the dance is the biggest part of that for me. But I think if we, as dancers, were willing to like take a tiny bit more risk, put ourselves a little bit more on the line, you know, like engage in the thing with our minds and bodies a little bit more, and less sort of like studying the thing. And for me, I think that would be significant.
So tricky because, like everyone knows, the dance needs to be flexible and alive and able to change. And we know that in jazz music and in jazz dance, so much of it is about expressing yourself as well.
Right.
And I think the tension between expressing yourself and allowing yourself to be shaped by the tradition, I think that's a really hard one to balance, especially something like Lindy Hop that's defined by its participants, whether you know it or not. As soon as you start to do Lindy Hop, even if, before you call yourself one, whatever you're doing is kind of creating the definition of what Lindy Hop is, and that means that the sort of tradition is always shifting around, where the center of the dance is always shifting around, and I think the temptation to sort of impose something from the top down on this is what Lindy Hop is and this is how it should be is so strong. But we realize, of course, that I mean, everyone knows that would kill that space for self-expression. I think this thing about, and I think that is, if there's something that should shift in the scene, I don't know how it could be organized in a way that sort of put that responsibility on all of us when we step into the scene to realize, like, oh, I'm helping to define what Lindy Hop is every time I do it. I mean, we should not tell people that sounds insane, but but I think sometimes the structure of classes and teachers and YouTube and other things, I don't think they're bad. Obviously, I'm pretty vested in it, but at the same time, I think it does serve to take away some of that responsibility, and then it can be hard to see the agency people have in helping to define the dance at any one moment.
I was trying to explain to the guitarist in my band some of the fears I had for the importance that gets put on people in our position in the scene, the current modern scene where, you know, we're teachers and there's a lot of modern videos and you can get away with just watching those and not having a real sense of, you know, some of the older dancers who brought this around or the historical context. You don't have to in order to become actually a really competent dancer. We were at a gig in Asia. I was kind of trying to express my concern with it, and I was like, well, my concern with it is that I'm not, if they're just watching me, I'm not good enough. Like, I'm not good enough for me to be their only picture. And I'm not saying that in a super, like, I suck sort of way, but it's just true. I can't be a big enough picture of this thing. It's so much more than one person. Even if I thought I was a better dancer than I do, it's just not right. And I was trying to explain to him, and he's like, but don't you feel like it's great that there is, you know, this modern iteration and people are making, you know, new dancing and people are appreciating it and there's some form for you to make a living at it. And I was like, well, you know, it was for my guitarist, and I was like, well, it's like if they had all your albums and they had never heard Charlie Christian. You know, they'd never heard the person that you listen to. They just listen to you. And he was like, oh, Jesus. I mean, it puts so much pressure on you, and he's like, you're right, I'm not good enough. And it's not because you should only listen to Charlie Christian. And I do think that, you know, historically things can get fetishized, and it can be like collecting these, you know, old historic baseball cards, like, oh, I know more about Charlie Christian than this person.
Doesn't necessarily mean you can swing out any better.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you're
about
a
your
great
dancing.
guitar player if you just know about these facts. But I feel like, you know, the way the modern scene is set up, it can be easy to think of it as this sort of self-encased bubble and to only look at in my opinion, the reaching but not there attempts of these people who are trying to do a good job. We're invested in doing this job, but I'm not good enough to be the only thing that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's so much bigger than just a few teachers or just a few competitions or just a few videos. It's a tradition. It's a culture from which it's coming from, and it's not only about back then, but it's certainly not only about now. And I feel like if I could I mean, and you can't give advice to people who aren't ready to hear it, including our young selves, but if I could give advice, or if I could hope for something, it's that some of the things that I'm striving for and some of the things that I'm pointing towards in my dancing and some of the things that I'm attempting to do and failing at, that some of that could come across, and people in the modern scene, younger dancers or less experienced dancers, could get some piece of that from me, not just this snapshot of me in this moment. That hopefully my appreciation of there being things before me can bleed over into some appreciation that they can get of things that came before me and before them, because it is a culture that we have to step into.
You're all part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
And learning more about it is not just homework. You have a richer experience.
It's an enriching of your own experience.
You just have a richer experience, so you'll thank yourself for knowing more. You know, it's not just like do this homework because it's a bummer. Like, it's a better experience to enjoy jazz more. It's a better experience to have seen this man dance. It's just a better experience. It's a richer experience, so it's easy to argue for. And it's just such a simple. I think it's with the ubiquity of like video stuff. That's an easy thing to do, and I would say it's well worth doing.
I agree. All right, we're almost out of time. So before I get to the questionnaire that we always close the Inside the Dancer Studio with, I would like everyone to please give a big round of applause for the thoughts of Peter and Skye. But as we usually do here, since this is inspired by Inside the Actors Studio.
Is Inside the Actors Studio still on TV, or are we all just like paying homage to
No,
something
I think it's
that's been
still on.
for a
James
while?
Lipton is not doing it anymore, I don't think, but it's still
Okay.
on. Yeah.
Just like, are we all referencing something that?
I don't
that
care.
no one
These
knows?
questions are awesome.
I don't care at all.
Just go out and Google it. It was a show time.
So James Lipton runs the Actors Studio in New York City, and he's a professor and teacher of actors. And he's done lots of interviews with actors inside the Actors Studio, obviously. And he has this questionnaire that he actually stole from this French interviewer, Bernard Pivot, and modified. And it is the greatest set of questions ever. And I'm stealing it from him, so it's part of a tradition. I'm part of a bigger picture. But I'll just go down the line. Skye, Naomi, Peter, as an order. Just give me what comes to mind when I ask you these questions. Skye, what is your favorite word? You need your mic.
Hit me one more time.
What is your favorite word?
Nothing's coming.
That's 2 words. We'll come back to you. Naomi, what's your favorite word? I gave you these ahead of time. Naomi, what's your favorite word?
Forgot to listen
but
to
like,
totally.
it'd be weird if we worked out a thing. Like, it'd be weird if we did that. Probably right now, like, baby. That's all I can think of. Just like baby.
Is water
baby.
tower one word? I'm sort of feeling water tower.
Water tower. I like that you waited until after Naomi said baby. New dad, Skye, says water tower after Naomi said baby. I'm just going to point that out.
Not your kid's name. Not your kid's name.
That's what he calls Gray, is water tower. That's his nickname for
Jesus
Gray.
Christ, the
Peter,
pressure's on.
Peter, what's your favorite
I
word?
know, that was a...
Well, get ready to be disappointed. Everybody, 'cause I don't okay, favorite word of all the words.
Or even just a subset.
A subset of words. The only thing I can think of, and this is not my favorite word, but I always really like 66. I thought it sounded really good.
What does that mean?
That's 66 in French.
Okay, 66. All right. So, all right. Water tower, baby, 66. What is your least favorite word? Skye, what is your least favorite word? That's a good one. Naomi.
Grass.
Grass.
That can't be.
Naomi, what is your least favorite
I
word?
don't know.
It's not that hard, Naomi.
There's no wrong answer.
It's an honest question.
Guilt.
Guilt. Peter, what is your least favorite word?
Well, now mine was gonna be funny. Now you do it once. This is bullshit. Okay.
All these
Well, I'm talking to Naomi, Skye. All right. I think my least favorite word. I think I got it from the Actors Studio. I think it was Mike Nichols. Smegma. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. That's a good one.
Strong.
Google it, yeah.
Don't Google it.
Don't actually, no. Don't Google
Do
it.
not Google that.
Look at
Especially
the
at work.
dictionary. Don't
Especially at work.
Google it.
All right.
I didn't.
Skye, what turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally? What
Louis
turns you
Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong.
And as, yeah.
And another thing.
That's a good answer. Naomi, what turns you on?
No pressure, love. Go ahead.
You know what? This is gonna be for you too. Prince.
That was better than if you said me. That was good. Okay. Now I'm all flustered. That was so good. Yeah.
She said Prince.
Prince.
I've been really obsessing watching these clips.
About the whole thing. Now I'm just thinking of artists because you guys do that. What turned me on? Can you do the full question? It
Yeah,
sounds
like
so weird. It's like,
Peter, what turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Thanks, that helps a lot. Okay. Yeah, music, honestly. Honestly, I think music is something that gets the juices flowing for real.
I'm gonna reverse the order so Skye has time to think this time.
Come on,
Peter.
I just spit that one out.
Peter, what turns you off?
What turns me off? Fakeness. Yeah, I hate it.
Naomi, what turns you off?
Bad music, can I say that?
You can say that.
Okay.
Bad music.
I'd like to refine your answer. And the other week I was in Berlin, and they played like a swing cover of a Bob Marley song, which is like so much worse than
It's a
you even
dangerous-
like that
dangerous
sound.
game.
It was like even worse than that.
I was gonna play that
So
tonight.
that,
Turned you off.
so that song.
Swing covers of Bob Marley.
Just that one.
Bad swing covers of Bob
Say
Marley.
swing covers and
Yeah,
then
swing covers.
insert anything after that.
Okay. Peter,
Yes.
what is your favorite curse word?
Too many. Too many. to
Your
choose
favorite.
from.
You pick one. Go from the guts.
Okay.
Careful.
You can say anything.
Yeah, I got a lot of them, but gotta be fuck. Fuck. It's just a
Fair.
It's classic. It's the Coke classic of curse words. I just love that like everyone's like Coke classic. There was new Coke for a while, you guys. It was fucking, yeah. Thank you, old people. Where are we? Okay, it was terrible.
Naomi, what is your favorite curse word?
What's my favorite curse word? I don't know. I know, that's the thing. Like, I swear more now that we're together, but.
I mean, it can be the same. If it's really the same answer, it
No,
could be
I'll
the
really
same.
lay into like fart. I'll say that
That's adorable.
sometimes. You say shart a lot. This is a big
It's
thing.
been on a jag lately with them. It rhymes. I don't know.
Fart, shart. Yeah, lots of weird ones.
It's getting very
Pass.
personal now.
Skye, what is your favorite curse word?
Fuck. Yeah. No, I'm with you. It's just wrong.
All right, we all say fuck.
I think that's universal.
This is a great reason to be late for our next
It's
class.
the best curse word.
Well, this is really supposed to be rapid fire. You guys are turning them into essay
Yeah,
questions.
that's true. You haven't had a panel with such depth before.
No.
Or perhaps panic.
Yeah.
Perhaps panic.
Sweat.
Naomi,
Yes.
what sound or noise do you love?
I don't know. Off the top of my head, like I do weirdly turn around every time my drummer does a rim click. Rim click. I love a rim click. Yeah.
Skye, what sound or noise do you love?
Running water.
Peter?
It's true.
The thing is, this is going to sound super corny, but it's true. It's totally true. I really love her laugh. It's true. She's got the best laugh, you guys. It's like mellifluous. It's great.
You should have had that as your favorite
I
word.
know shit. I blew it.
Skye,
Aren't we done with these yet?
no, you're halfway through.
Oh,
Skye,
Really?
if you guys were faster, we'd be done.
We're so bad.
Skye, what sound or noise do you hate?
I love Gray, my baby, but his laugh
He's got a thing going.
and his cry are sort of the same.
It's the ambiguity.
I don't know if I would say hate is such a strong word, but
Hi, Sophie.
I pass.
Throwing his child up there, good.
Peter,
Babies laugh.
Peter, what sound? Peter, what sound or noise do you hate?
I love it too. I miss it.
Okay.
Essay question.
Thank you.
This guy got me on this now. I think there's this.
You hate Grace?
No. This was also in Berlin, but it's a couple years ago.
No, I know.
There's a song. Do you guys know that Dire Straits song?
Oh, I changed my answer.
I know. See, that's really good.
I remember you guys talking about this.
Do you guys know that Dire Straits song "Money
We
Is
were
for
all at this
Nothing"?
gig.
Yeah, chicks
Money is for
free.
nothing? Yeah, okay. And do you know that song, 16 tons of wood, which I hate? Well, what if you mashed them up and put them together? Yeah, so it was money for
You
nothing.
played him at a dance.
To the tune, if you will, tune of 16 tons. The worst shit I've ever heard. That I hate.
I was going to play that at some level.
Really hate
Noted.
it.
Live or
It was DJ'd. Someone chose to play it.
Naomi,
We're watching
what
it
sound or
right now.
noise do you hate, Naomi?
nails being filed.
Ooh.
I would like that.
Good call. All right, Naomi, I'm going to stick with you. Other than your own,
Best choice.
other than your own, what profession would you like to attempt?
Singer. That was easy.
Peter, other than your own, what profession would you like to attempt?
It's amazing how I still am surprised when you ask me that. I'm still not ready to answer a question after all these questions.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, okay. Oh, please. No, not. I would say chef. Chef.
The audience approves that answer. Skye, what would you like to attempt?
be a clown as a child.
He's not joking. This is a real thing.
It's true.
Charlie Chaplin style.
I've heard there's footage.
Really? We're gonna have to do that next year. We're gonna have
Jerry's right
I'm
there.
just making him sweat.
Jerry's right there. You have to be
Okay.
quiet.
Skye, what profession would you not like to do under any circumstance? What job would you never ever want to do?
Porta John cleaner.
The poop industries in general. I mean. So,
Naomi, what occupation would you never ever want to
That
do?
seems like an obvious one, and we should wrap this up, so sure. Poop handler? Is that a... I'm about to be one.
You're
in
gonna
2
be a
months.
mom, so you guys better get used to
Actually,
that.
changing the diapers is better than I expected. It's sort of a cozy time.
Peter, what occupation would you never want to attempt at under any circumstance?
let's see. I think like I've already done, what?
Oh, I'm just thinking like whenever you see like actors doing that fake shit, like that, you're like, I could never do that. I could never do that.
You know, if there was like some sort of like,
Like a reality show.
no, if you were like a judge or a test audience for like improv or improv comedy or like beginner stand up stuff, I would die. I would probably die. It was just of like vicarious embarrassment.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question. Skye, I'll start with you since you're closest.
Start all of these.
No, I've spread it
Finish
around.
all of them as well.
Yeah, it's impossible math. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Good to see you.
I mean, not right now, but but later. I would want them to say, all your friends are here.
That's too touchy. Okay. Let's see. You guys do a thought experiment. Answer this question, you bunch of jerks. It's hard. Okay.
They were real quick on this one, Peter. I'll
know,
ask you
I was
again.
waiting for a lot more hemming and hawing.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Let's see. Everything's okay.
That's a good answer. And we're done with the questions, so everything is okay. Everybody, please give a round of applause for Peter Strom, Naomi Uyama, and Skye Humphreys. Thank you, everybody, for coming to Inside the Dancer Studio at Lily Fest. Enjoy the rest of your classes. I'll see some of the dance tonight.